All right. Hello and welcome to the Soul Wisdom Exchange. I'm Regina Curtis, the creator of At Matry. I'm a soul wisdom mentor and a soul sourced business strategist. That's a mouthful. Um, so I'm so excited to have a guest on the show here today, Becki Fleischer. So let me tell you a little bit about what this show is all about, and then I'm going to have Becki tell you a little bit about her. So soul wisdom, what is it? The way that I describe this is our authentic ways of knowing or how we receive information, and being, how we process and integrate that information. And I love connecting with soulpreneurs here, people who are really tuning into that soul wisdom and building businesses and creating from that space. So Becki is one of those soulpreneurs that I've met along my journey. Becki, tell us a little bit about yourself. How are you today?
Hi, good morning, everybody. And Regina, thank you so much for having me on. I love the
Absolutely.
name of this show and I love your platform so much. I think it's so wonderful
Thank
that you
you.
talk about this soul wisdom and how we bring our soul wisdom into the world because that's a big passion of mine. So I am a musician, actually, primarily that is what I do is I'm a musician. I'm also a life coach. And those two things are interestingly intertwined for me
I
because
believe it.
music is really my soul wisdom. That's kind of how my soul wisdom speaks to me. It's how it kind of came in as a child when I was really young. I say that I was a musician from the time I was born until I was 18 years old. I lived, eat, breathed. I was the music kid. That's what I did. And then when I was 18, as what happens to so many of us, I got real, and I went to college and I had to start thinking, excuse me, I had to start thinking about, what I want to do. And
Mhm.
music didn't seem like a viable option. It just seemed like something that could be a hobby. And so I really just kind of dropped it. I didn't have the same outlets. I just didn't go after it in the same fashion. And so,
Mhm.
really, for 18 years, I was a musician. And then for 18 years, I wasn't. And then when I was 36, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, a new friend, and she was saying how she sings in a band. And I remember having this moment of saying, wait a minute, what? Like, how you're a grown up and you have kids, and how can you sing in a band? What are you talking about? And that really kind of opened my eyes back up. And, I talk about it on my podcast, which is called Unleash Your Soul Song. And I call those things like whispers. They're just little whispers from the universe, from God, from source, whatever word that you use that's accessible to
Yeah.
you, that is something that's bigger than us, that helps guide our actions in this life. You have these little whispers drop in. And hers was the first one that came in. And then there were so many more that followed, and just being open to hearing those again. So, really, at the age of 36, I picked music back up,
Mm.
and I picked it up in a major, major way. And I had a pretty big story that kind of goes along with that, which maybe we'll get into, or maybe we won't.
Yeah.
But part of that journey is how music started coming in for me and how I started engaging with it. And it really became it was the platform, it was the vehicle that I needed to do what people call the work, like
I
the
love
work.
it. I love it. The work, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm gonna see if I can grab this from behind me without too much. Yeah. Okay. So I recently wrote a chapter in this book called Creativity is Whatever You Want It to Be. And my chapter in this book is about that whisper. And it's
Yeah.
about, interestingly enough, I think I was approximately 36 also, which to me makes a lot of sense because we have these 9-year cycles in our
Mhm.
life. And there's a lot, I mean, I study a lot of different self-development tools and modalities, and there are a lot of synchronicities within them and amongst them, and 9-year cycles seem to be very prevalent. I can't speak today. um so the reason I bring this up is because what you just said about that whisper dropping in and being like, wait a minute, this is a part of you, this is a part of who you are, this is your soul wisdom and
Mhm.
how you communicate. It's time to bring this back into your life, and you brought it in that big way. For me, it was art, and that is a very similar experience that I had of being an artist. Although I can't say that I leaned into it quite as deeply as it sounds like you did from, 0 to 18. But it was always a part of who I was. I was always a very creative person, exploring different things, and then actually went to college for art and got um, I got that. What are you going to do with an art degree?
Right.
Kind of, And so I was like, oh, okay, well, I can't make money being an artist is the story I was told, right? So I'll make a career out of it by becoming an art teacher. And I think that's a path that a lot of artists take,
Mhm.
not saying that's a bad thing, right? It's definitely needed. However, I think it also is a path that we're encouraged to take sometimes as like the safe route, because, if you really lean into your passion of just being who you are
Yeah.
and allowing that to be the driving factor for you, then maybe you end up broke, right? It's that
Yeah.
starving artist
Yeah.
mentality.
Yeah.
Um, so
And
actually,
what's
oh,
interesting about that is that, just to tag on, of people saying,
yeah,
"How could you make a living?" And what's so fascinating about that is, as an artist, as a creative, you're creative. And so if someone were just to encourage you and to say,
yes,
this is your thing," right? You
yeah,
are a creative person. My daughter is a creative writer. She loves
mhm,
it. She loves reading, she loves writing, and she's getting ready to leave for college. And it's been such a struggle for her this year because she said, "It's not like I have this path, where my friend knows she wants to be a doctor. My other friend knows she wants to be a lawyer. My other friend knows that they feel like they have these linear paths." And
mhm,
I said to her, "The sooner that you can give yourself permission not to live on this linear path, the sooner you're going to break free, because you, my love, are a creative.
yeah,
You are a creative individual, and your life is gonna take so many different twists and turns, and you're gonna have so many different iterations of your career, very likely, as a creative,
oh
and they
yeah,
can all be wonderful if you lean fully into them and bring
yes,
your whole being and your whole self and your whole intelligence and your whole heart. You're gonna find the path. You're gonna find things that will bring you what you need in
yeah.
those moments, and you're going to be fulfilled, and you're going to be bringing amazing creative things into the world. I mean, think about how many songs or paintings
Oh my
or
gosh.
books or movies that have changed your life, that have changed the way you've looked at something and completely changed your perspective or pulled you out of a dark place. I constantly think, like, what if those people hadn't picked up the pen?
Right?
What if they hadn't picked up the paintbrush or strummed that guitar to come up with that note? If they had just listened to everything telling them to stop. So it's like, you're a creative. Go
Be
create.
creative. Yeah. Empower your passion, right? That's the theme that I really want to like talk with you about today. But before we even really, I mean, I feel like we've already we
We
already
jumped
dove
right
into,
in.
yeah, we jumped right in. But think about the opposite of that too, right? Like people are when we are truly that creative person, and that is the way that we express ourselves, right? That is our way of being. When we restrict that and go into a profession or a career, etc., where we don't really want to be, then we're not only are we, not showing up fully for ourselves, but we're also not showing up fully in that career or for anyone else that we're engaging with, right?
Yeah.
Like if I go visit a doctor or I hire a lawyer or, whatever, some of these professions that are seen as like a straight path, right? Like you can go from here, you can take that straight path and go there. And I'm not devaluing those things because we definitely need those in the world as well. What I'm saying is that when I go to one of these people in these roles, I want them to be fully there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't want them to be thinking about, how they want to be painting a picture rather than helping me with my whatever my problem or my issue is that I've come to them for, right? I
Yeah.
also don't want them to be bitter about the fact that they're there or resentful. I want them to be there because they're passionate about being there and that is their way of being fully who they are.
Yes, absolutely. And, the same thing, just as you were saying that, I was just having a conversation last night with some girlfriends who's, we're all of the age where our kids are going to college. So our
Mhm.
kids are very, mired in this. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And, one of my friends was saying her son has so many different passions. And, he's interested in so many different things. And so he has really kind of gone maybe I should be a doctor because I love chemistry, or maybe I should be in finance because I can, I'm good at that kind of stuff. And, I had said something about being a doctor. I said, you really have to have a passion to do
Yeah,
that. And it's just making me think as we're talking. I remember my dad was an attorney, and he would always say, you really shouldn't be an attorney unless you have a passion to be an attorney, because there's so much schooling, there's so
yeah,
much debt that you have to take on. So there are a lot of barriers to entry, even with the things that we consider to be more linear. So med
absolutely.
school, so difficult, so
Yeah,
many years. It's so hard, and they make it hard on purpose because they
yeah,
need to weed people out, right? They want to make sure that they have these high caliber doctors for good reason. So there are barriers even with the linear things, right? That are
yes.
gonna be in your way. So it's pick your hard, pick your
Right.
hard. It's just but follow your passion. If you
Pick
follow
your
your
heart, and
passion.
also with that though, because with anything is going to come challenges, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
also benefits, right? So the thing that makes those challenges worthwhile are the benefits of
Yeah.
being in joy and excitement and flow, and all
Yeah.
those things that when you can bring those into alignment, that is what I would say is empowering your passion, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Empowering your soul wisdom, your ways of knowing and being, and living fully from that space, because now you can really do, not only do the work for yourself, right, but then you can, as you do the things that are empowering you, bringing prosperity into your life, you are in return bringing that to other people as well and sharing your
Absolutely.
gifts.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I also think that, if you're really truly following your passion, if you are going after that thing, the obstacles and things that come in your path, those are the pieces of work that are divinely designed to help you. So if
Yes.
you're walking down a different path, and I feel like I can say this from experience because I think it's hard to speak from, I don't like to speak from like just in theory kind of, but
Yeah.
I mean I've experienced this. My career um really was in politics. I worked in politics in Indiana. I'm from Indiana originally. I was in politics in Indiana. I was the director of scheduling for the Secretary of State there, both in her regular office, her state office, and then I switched over to her campaign. After that, I briefly worked at a school choice organization, and then I moved to Washington, D.C., and I worked in the White House Office of Management and Budget and the U.S. Department of Education. And I was always a project manager of some sort, director of
Mhm.
scheduling or project manager, because I'm good at that. I'm
Yeah.
good at organizing things, taking things that don't seem like they relate, or maybe they do relate, but how do you
This
organize it? How do
sounds
you get it
kind of
going?
like what you do as a musician,
Yeah, yes, it
right?
is. It is. But the interesting thing is, so doing that, so it's like you could see the thread, right? You could see the
Yeah.
thread. But I wasn't passionate about that. I really was not. I was not passionate about politics. In fact, I don't even touch it with a 10-foot pole anymore. But it was not my thing. But what was my thing was making order of disorder. And I was
Yes.
good at that. I was really good at that. But the lessons that were being presented to me on that path were very different, and I wouldn't necessarily call them soul expanding lessons. They were lessons of intellect. They were
Mhm.
lessons of resilience, but not necessarily in a soulful way, but more in a physical endurance, kind of way. Um, those were very different lessons. And when I switched to my passion of music, the lessons that I'm now getting presented with are the most soul expanding, life changing, enriching, and nourishing lessons.
Yes.
So know the difference. Like
I
there's a
just felt
difference.
that land right in my heart. And it's interesting. I chuckled a little bit when you were talking about that, because there was a point in my career, and I've found a lot of joy through the different career paths that I've taken. I'm not saying that those were soul sucking or that they were just like, completely depleted. There were definitely lessons and insights that I received. I also received a lot of joy and gained a lot of friends and had a lot of beautiful
Mhm.
experiences.
Yeah.
I would not want to go back into any of those experiences though now, knowing what it's like to be fully in the work that I'm
Yeah.
doing, that is who I am, right? It's a
Yeah.
reflection of who I am and how I am. And but I chuckled because there was a point, I remember specifically saying this out loud several times, and I didn't get it at the time, but what you just said made me think, that's exactly what was happening. Is I remembered saying, I'm not challenged anymore in my
Mm.
role. The thing that is challenged is my patience. The thing that is challenged is my endurance, right? It's my,
Mhm,
these are
mhm.
the things, the type of challenges I was facing is like, how much can I take on? How
Yeah,
much can I keep pushing myself through this? How much can I keep doing this even though I don't feel fulfilled, right? Those are challenges that can help you grow. They can help you be stronger. They can help you realize that this is not a place necessarily that you want to be, right?
yeah.
And great, now we've done that. I don't want to go back to that place. I appreciate those. I have gratitude for those moments and for those insights. It doesn't mean I want to keep reliving them though, right? And I think that's that difference that you were just talking about.
Yeah, and I love that you brought that up because I don't regret I do not regret the path
No.
that my life has taken. I really don't. I think it all belongs.
Yep.
There's wisdom in all of it. It's just different types of wisdom. You know, that's very I talk a lot on my podcast, which is called Unleash Your Soul Song, which is why my name is up there like that.
Yeah, no, I love it.
I don't think I mentioned that yet, so that's why that's listed like that. But, I talk about that on my podcast, you know, the first half of life and the second half of life.
Mm,
You know, the first half of life, you might look at it more like a survival dance and maybe not even survival in this bad way of thinking of
right.
it, but just our survival dance to make it in this world. How are we carving out our space in this world? And that's okay because that's what we're doing during that time of our life. And we're learning important lessons. Important things are coming. They're just different than second half of life lessons when you align your outward expression into the world with your soul's calling. That's a very different vibe, and it's a very different feeling, and those are very different lessons that come in.
Very much.
Yeah.
I so one of the things that I one of my ways of knowing, I'll say, is through exploring lots of different tools, techniques, teachers, etc. Like I love to learn, I love to actually embody things, read whether it's reading, experiencing, like having experiences, understanding, taking something in, processing it, and then seeing how I can integrate that into my life, right? And um not to say that I follow everything I read or experience, right? But I digest the things that really feel aligned for me and then release the rest of it. But when you were just talking, and even a couple of times throughout our conversation, this book just really keeps coming to mind. So it's called Your Hidden Symmetry,
Ooh.
and it's by Jean Hanner. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but it's based on a system called the 9 star key, Ki, like life force, basically
Mm,
life
mhm.
force energy. And she talks in this book specifically about how you pass through these 4 major gates in your life, and they start at the age 40. So 40, 50, 60, and 70, you have these major life gates. And there's a lot of in here about, so it's called Your Hidden Symmetry, right? And the basis of this system, the 9 star key, is, I think it roots back into Chinese medicine and the elements. It also is something that's been studied over millennia, where like there's just millions of years, basic, not, well, I don't know, maybe millions of years, but just years and years and years and years, decades, centuries of this information of tracking these types of cycles,
Mm.
and the same things being found, these themes. Not to say you're destined to have this experience, but themes that happen at different points in your life. And just the other day, I was rereading a section of this, and she was talking about how when you turn 40, you actually, in this system and this way of knowing, you can live off of your life force energy that you come into your body with until the age of 40. And at
Huh.
that point, you really need to start change. You have this need for change and to do things in a different way. And so I just see a lot of synchronicity with what you're talking about with this kind of like first half of life, second half of
Yeah.
life. And it's just really resonant. So you may want to check out that book.
I do wanna check out that book. That's fascinating to me. I'm like you, I like to s I just soak it all in, these different
Yeah.
perspectives, because and the more you read of these different, authors that are writing these things, it's they're all saying the same thing,
Yes.
but there's
Yep.
no like, codified source that they're all pulling from. So they're all pulling from a spirit and from their own knowing,
Yeah.
and that's all dropping in, and there's so much similarity between there has to be wisdom in there. There has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I want to read actually something from your bio. Um, and I'm going to read it quickly. So it says, Becky believes that by weaving together our inner experiences of spirit with external wisdom and the reality of our outer lives, we can get in tune, share our gifts, and experience the joy of striving for our potential. So, this is beautiful.
Oh, thank
And
you.
I definitely resonate with that. Um, there's a lot in there that what you're saying is so, what you just said about all these authors, all these systems, right? We're all saying the same thing. And yet we have this way of expressing it that is unique to us, right? I would call that our ways of being, or
Mhm.
this is how we, empower our passions. We empower our ways of expressing ourselves. And there's that inner knowing. So whether
Yeah.
that is spirit, the universe, God, source, however you label that, right? However you understand that, your inner knowing, your higher self, there's a million different ways that you can attune with that or to receive that, and lots of methods in which you can receive it through. But
Mhm.
that's that divine alignment, right? Where you have these experiences in your outer world. I
Yeah.
call those our layers of influence, right? There are things, tools and techniques and ways, modalities that we can experience those and learn about them. But really, everything is a reflection back to us of this is showing you something about yourself. It's not necessarily telling you that that's the way it is, because you then get to decide, does this resonate for me? And what do I want to do with that
Right.
information? Right.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what a powerful circumstance it would be, or what a powerful place it would be if we were able to, like what you said to your daughter about going off to school, and you know this is who you are. You are giving her permission, but also just empowering her, right? By
Mhm.
reflecting to her, it's because not because she needs your permission, so to speak, but because you are supporting her in that and empowering her in being who she is.
Yeah.
And that's a different experience than it sounds like maybe you and I had when we were in that role, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I thank you so much for bringing that it's almost my mission statement that you caught on my website. I don't present it as such, but I spent a lot of time on just that sentence. We write our websites and we have so many words on them,
Yes.
to explain all the
Well,
things that
those
we
are
do.
powerful ones, and I felt them.
Oh, well, thank you, and I spent a lot of time, and, it's really that's a kind of a four-part thing for me.
Hmm.
And it's a lot of what you just said. The first part is our inner experience of spirit. And
Hmm.
for me, I grew up Catholic, which I am eternally grateful for because it was an amazing container. Organized religion is an amazing container to organize your life, to have that scaffolding around making sense of the world around you. It's an important structure, I think, and it's a helpful structure. It
Yeah.
would benefited me greatly. That's not to say people can't find it in other ways. And so the first part really is that inner experience of spirit. What I did not like about Catholicism and where I ended up having a major fissure, I guess, with my faith
Hmm.
of many things with the Catholic Church, but I'm just going to stick with this one for now is even as a child, I felt very in touch with my soul and my spirit. Music was a big part of that. I knew, for example, I knew I could play the guitar before I ever touched a guitar. I knew I could do it. I knew it. I knew I was meant to do it. I knew that if I held one, I would be able to make it make sound and make something
Love it.
beautiful. And when I finally got a guitar, I could play 2 songs that night. So there is something about the knowing inside of you.
Yeah.
I say that desire is really it's a forecast of future you. It's telling you this is where, like, this is future you. If you would just go towards it, it's there. You
Yeah.
can do it. That's what desire does. It's pulling you to that future self. But at the same time that I was feeling that, I went to Catholic school. I grew up in a very Catholic family. And whether it was my perception of it or whether it was real, I felt like I was supposed to quiet my inner knowing, my inner spirit, that was not something to be trusted. It was egoic, it was self-centered, and it was more than anything, it just was not to be trusted. The only thing to be trusted was what the church said. And I had a big problem with that because it was telling me to lie to myself.
Mhm.
And I didn't like that, and I didn't have any teachers along the way showing me how to weave those 2 things together. So I did go through a long period of my adult life where I feel like I've always been a seeker. I enjoy learning about other religions. I enjoy learning about other spiritual philosophies. I really, really do, and I think there's so much wisdom to be had in all of it, you
Yeah.
know? But I never had the platform, the permission, the I don't know what to really explore it. So for me in my coaching practice, and that's where you got that from my coaching website. It's so important to me that my clients know that if you're going to work with me, we are taking that inner wisdom, but we're also taking the outer wisdom because a lot of people do pull on organized religion and their faith or some other spiritual practices that come from wisdom traditions.
Mhm.
That's really good. That's an important thing to weave together. But then we also have this life, right? We're
Yes.
living in the human realm and we're living in a human body and we have real things that are happening in our lives. We have kids, we have bills to
Yeah.
pay. There are realities, right? So you have to weave those three things together. And then the fourth piece for me is the joy you feel striving for your potential. And I got that actually from, I heard somebody say that was the Greeks' definition of happiness, that
Oh,
happiness is the joy you feel striving for your potential.
I
And
love
that
it.
resonated so true to me because that's what it is. Like, there is such joy when you're in the journey of going towards your path and towards your potential, that everything along the way, the obstacles, the lessons, the hard things, the good things, like, it's all joy because
Mm,
you are striving for your potential, and that's why you're happy. That's why you're happy even when hard things happen. So, for me, that's like a four-part kind of mission statement, and that's how I came to each of them and why it's so important to me that I make that really clear that that's a big part of if people work with me, that's what I'm all about.
yeah, I love it. And that's so important. One of my missions is to really help people interpret their soul wisdom language, right? And what you were
Mhm.
just talking about, there's a reason why I use the word interpret and not translate. Because when you're translating something, that it means you're technically taking one word and replacing it with another word from another language, right? But when you're
Yeah.
interpreting, you're really tuning into the essence of that meaning and then using language that resonates for you,
I
right? So
love that.
and and I came to that through this exploration of actually, using different language over and over and over until I found the ones that I found the words that really resonated, that landed for me,
Mm.
that align with that same essence of what you're just talking about, of feeling the excitement, feeling the joy while striving for your potential. I mean, that's a beautiful way of describing what I think we all are doing as soulpreneurs, right? We
Yeah.
are trying to find out, figure it out along the way. And that's a wonderful thing. We don't have to have it figured out because
No.
the joy actually comes in striving for reaching that point, not in necessarily reaching it.
Yeah,
A little bit.
truly, it's the journey, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's so good, you don't want it to stop,
Yes,
like,
exactly.
there really is no destination, right? Because if you hit the destination, you would be sad because then the
Yeah.
journey would be over. You don't want
And
the journey to be over.
you can be at the destination the whole journey. Like,
Yeah, yeah. It's
I feel
it's
like we
all these
speak those same language.
paradoxes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, you are definitely speaking my language right now in all the ways. I love the journey, and it is something that's been a mantra of mine for a long, long time, is life is an adventure, enjoy the journey. Because what else? Why wouldn't we want to do that, right? Like,
Yeah.
even in those moments, that doesn't mean that you're skipping over the fact that there are hardships, right?
Yeah.
And that you get stuck in traffic, or that there are wars and heartache and heartbreak and all of these things, right? Those are
Oh yeah.
absolutely happening. And it's not ignoring the fact that those are happening. And yet, it is honoring the fact that you are here to be living this life and finding joy and living experiences. And if you can help people along the way, great. That makes it even
Yeah.
better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think to your point about it's also how we move through those experiences, those hard experiences with more grace and more kindness and
Yeah.
more loving the more loving approach to ourselves and to the people that we are in those experiences with.
Mhm.
It changes who you are. It really does change how you approach things when you're on like the grind path, you're going to grind through a hard time.
Yeah.
You're just gonna grind through it, and you like, see my face? That's how you're gonna
Yeah.
do it,
I can
and that's
feel
what you're
it
gonna
like in
yeah,
my
and that's the
own jaw.
energy, right? Like, that's the
Yeah.
energy you're gonna bring to it, and honestly, I was really good at grinding through stuff, and I was good at
Me
grinding
too.
through stuff in a collegial, respectful way,
Mhm.
but it wore on me. It really wore on me, and it was so taxing. Now when I go through a very difficult experience, which I've had a very difficult couple of years, I don't feel like I'm wearing it the same way. I'm able to bring it in and process it for what it is and see the wisdom in it maybe that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to see and kind of be able to put it in its place and move on in a more graceful, grace being, you get something that maybe you don't necessarily deserve. It's like a piece that you don't deserve, but you get it. And
Mhm.
it's a really nice thing, actually, so, yeah, moving through with a little more wisdom maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's the way that I experience that is being able to hold things a little lightly, right? Like,
Yeah.
a little more lightly. Whereas, um, I think this is something that, for anyone who identifies as an empath, right, or someone who really feels deeply, is really what that means, is that oftentimes, I know even for myself, as a child, I didn't really know what to do with that, right?
Mhm.
I tried to help people by being, I knew I could feel what other people were feeling, sometimes even beyond the scope of the people that I realized I was feeling their feelings for, right?
Mm.
So sometimes that was a community wide thing, sometimes that was a collective wide thing. It just was something that I would experience, but I had no language to explain that and no framework to be able to understand it or tools to be able to deal with it, right? But now, having gone through the life journey that I have, I do have tools where I can't say that there are times when I don't feel it intensely, or that I have a little more of a challenge to be able to hold that lightly out here rather than hold it in my body, right?
Mhm.
Because when I can recognize, when I feel it in my body, I can tune into it, I can identify it, and I can move it outside of my body so I can look at it, right? If you're feeling it inside your body, and the reason I'm saying this is because if you're feeling it inside your body, you're identifying with it as yours, as
Yeah.
you, as who you are, right? But if you can actually isolate that for what it is energetically, and imagine moving it outside of your body, you can actually look at it, you can touch it, you can feel it, you can explore it with a little more curiosity, and not identifying it as yourself, but identifying it as, okay, there's this thing, there's this feeling, there's this sense, there's these emotions, etc. And but it's not who I am, it's not me, it is a part of me. It's something that I feel, but it's not necessarily who I am. And
Yeah.
when you can do that, then you can explore it a little differently, and you can stay present with who you are and what you're doing, right? What your goals are, what your path is, and still be present with this other thing too.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. Being able to hold it away from you a little bit. It also helps you to piece apart the things that are truly bothering you, because sometimes when we hold it inside, it all gets jumbled up together,
Oh,
right?
yes.
And then we can't see, right? And then we can't tell, it's just like,
Yes.
"Ah, like, I'm just so upset about this." Okay, but what exactly? But what
Hmm.
exactly is upsetting about this? What exactly is hitting you? And if you pull it out and you could kind of start to look at it a little bit and say, okay, well, this actually doesn't bother me. So it's not
Hmm.
that, even though I thought maybe that was tied up in it. And this doesn't. And then before you know it, you can get to, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's
There it
this
is.
piece right here. And
Yes.
once you see what that piece is, then you can start to work on it and then start to untangle that one little piece. And guess what? That's so much easier than untangling this huge big ball. Like this one little piece is very easy to go after,
Yeah.
but the big, huge mess is a lot harder. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, a phrase dropped in the other morning that sometimes the simplest things are not easy, right?
Yeah.
So, simple and easy do not necessarily mean the same thing.
Right.
Because, yeah, once you untangle all of that and you find this thing, it's like, oh, this is it. This is what was causing all that big trouble. Because it was like radiating into all these other things, which actually weren't
Mhm.
necessarily the problem, but
Right.
were in some way synchronous or aligned in some way, right? So
Yeah.
I'd love to hear you as we're starting to come towards the end of our conversation, but I want to hear you talk about, if you're open to it, how do you use music to help you do this work?
Yeah, so it's very it's very interesting for me, and I'll share this quick story because I know we're coming to an end here,
We've
but
got some time, but go ahead.
the thing that pulled me the thing that pulled me, into this kind of more soul expanding space, I'll call it my second half of life journey.
Yeah.
When I was young, as I said, from, as long as I can remember till I was 18, I was a musician. I loved everything about music. The one thing I wanted to do so desperately was to write my own music, to write
Hmm.
songs. And for whatever reason, when I was younger, it didn't come to me. I didn't The teacher wasn't there for me to show me how to do it. It wasn't coming to me naturally. I just couldn't make it happen, even though I tried. Couldn't make it happen. So fast forward, and there's a longer story, which it's I talk about it in one of my earliest podcast episodes, and I think it's the one that's called "Oh Shift, What's Happening," which is a
I
which is a popular episode.
bet. It's
because
intriguing.
because we all know what shift really is.
Yes.
Really saying. But
Yes.
it's that moment where you're starting to feel this um, unease in your life. It's call it a midlife crisis, call it the entry to the second half of life. For me, it's a space of unknowing. It's a space where
Mm.
maybe everything in your life looks really stable and sure, and you think you've got it all figured out, but all of a sudden nothing feels fulfilling anymore. And you're starting to feel lost. And the things that used to make you full and happy are no longer doing that and you feel really selfish and you feel like, who am I to complain about anything? I have so much to be grateful for. It's a weird, weird spot to be.
Yeah.
And what I try to explain to the people I work with and on my show, I've come to view that as I do think that in the first half of our lives, we look at things very linearly, very linearly. We're born, we go to school, we have hobbies, we do this, then we go to college, and then we meet someone, and then we have a family, and very linearly.
Hmm.
But I think that true life is actually much more circular and cyclical. And
Yes.
so I think at that mark, at maybe it's 40, maybe it's 35, maybe it's 45. I think for different people, it comes at different times. And I think you get thrown into it for different reasons. You could have a trauma that throws you there.
Hmm.
You could have grief that throws you there. It could just be life that brings you there, where you're entering into that cyclical phase of life. And it's that shift between the linear and the cyclical where you get really disoriented because your very orientation to life is changing. And so it's hard, we don't know where to put our feet. We're not really sure what solid ground is. We have a real yearning for home, even though we're not really sure what we're talking about when we say home, because it's like, I have my physical home. Am I talking about my parents' home? Am I talking about my home state? I don't really know, like where I'm just have this yearning. So I was in this phase of my life and I was already kind of tiptoeing into music, but I really had a soul calling after a lot of contemplation, a lot of deep meditation. I had something kind of drop in that said to me, because I kept asking the question, if you could do anything in the world without cause of needing money or
Yeah.
who cares what people think, what would it be? And I kept meditating on that and really trying to get an answer. And I was on a walk just out in nature, as it happens for me. And it dropped in music. And I just remember thinking that's the most ridiculous, crazy thing I've ever heard. I mean, I am like almost a 40-year-old woman. I have 2 teenage kids. Like, I live in the burbs and I haven't picked up my guitar. Like, I had only just started playing guitar again. I was like, I haven't even like been singing. I haven't really, like, what are you talking about? Music? Like, that's just a ridiculous industry to even get in, right? But I was trying to follow the whispers and trying to honor the whispers. So I went there, and it was in that space of time of I heard the whisper. I knew I had to do more. Some things shifted with the band that I was in, and so I was really feeling a pull towards taking an opportunity that had been presented to me a couple of years earlier of singing with another band, which I didn't do because honestly they intimidated me. They were like session musicians. They were what I considered to be pro, and I certainly was not in my estimation. So I had always said no to them. But one day I just knew. I had the knowing and I knew, and I was like, this is it. This is the step I'm supposed to take. And it's been knocking at my door for about a year and a half, and I've been slamming the door shut. And now I got to open the door. So I sent the email and said, let me, if you guys are still looking for a female singer, let me try for it. And within a couple of hours, my very first song dropped in. And it's the song that I talk about in that episode, Shift. And it's the first song I ever wrote. And it came almost completely full and whole, which for anyone who's an artist or creative, the muse rarely does that. She usually makes you work for it.
Yeah, you have to work for it.
But I did work for it. I had taken that big step.
Years you had worked for it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you aligned with that wisdom and
Yeah.
that's what I call intentional action, right? Like you
Yeah.
align with what it is that you really are, that potential, you align with your potential, and then you take intentional action towards
Yes.
that and you move yourself closer. And guess what the universe does? What? Here you go.
Yeah. So that was like my little encourager. Like, I wrote
Yeah.
that song, and it was through writing that song I realized, like, I can find wisdom in writing music for somehow this, and it's interesting because I can look back at that song now and see that it had more in it than even I knew then.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, I wrote it then and I thought I knew what it was about. No way. I look at it now and I'm like, you had no idea what that song was about when that came in. And and
Yeah.
I'm sure in 5 more years I'll look again and be like, and you didn't even know then the full extent of it.
The full
So
extent of it.
yeah, that's how, like, writing music really, that it brings it in a very
Mm,
powerful way for me. I like writing music, and I also just love singing, and bringing that joy to people, singing a song that somebody loves. I can't tell you how many times people have come up to me and said, "Oh, I got tears in my eyes when you sang that song. That's the song that I had at my wedding," or that song
mm.
reminded me of my best friend who passed away, or something. But to bring that to people is really fulfilling, and I that's how music kind of plays into my soul journey there.
Beautiful. I love it. I love hearing you talk about it too, because for me, it's very much how my artwork works for me now. And it hasn't always worked that way, where I was trained as an artist. I went to art school, and I was trained as an art teacher. So
Mhm.
I didn't even call myself an artist for years, like not until really a couple of years ago. I'd had a whole career in as an art teacher. I'd had a whole nother career working in higher ed as creating programs for professional development for artists, and yet still I was like, I'm not qualified to be an artist, like.
And yet that's the highest art, right? Like, you're teaching
Yeah.
and you're doing, like, creative artist, like, that's the
No,
highest art.
not considered myself an artist. And because I didn't feel that it was good enough to be considered art. And the thing is, it's actually really kind of funny. Like when I started to make art, not for anyone else, but to make it just because it was what was pouring through me. And that was at
Mm.
that same kind of shift point for me where like everything was dissolving in my life that I'd worked for up until that point. And suddenly I was like, oh, that's all gone. So what am I doing here now? And really just sat down with my art for the first time in a very, very long time
Mm.
to just create and let it come through me. I had what I call the quantum leap in my artwork, and it was so simple. Like the techniques and the things that I do now, I mean, I use stencils in my art, and um, I had judgment around that because I was like, "What am I doing using stencils?" I went to art school, I paid all this money, I was trained to do these things, and I'm using stencils. But the reason I do is because I'm actually channeling soul wisdom through me while I'm creating, and it's a tool that I use because I get the steps, the wisdom step by step. It's a color, it's a shape, it's a pattern, it's a very slow, intentional, almost like moving meditation when I
Mm.
create art. And as
Mhm.
it comes through, it's like there's three entities happening at the same time. I'm the observer, I'm of the entire situation. I'm the receiver of the wisdom that I'm getting, and I'm acting with in alignment with that guidance. But then as it all comes together, I sit with it and I just kind of open up the channel and I let a message come through. And that written message, like what you were saying with your songs, that it has this evolving meaning for you that,
Yeah.
as you move through time, you can come back to these words and receive a deeper layer of meaning from them. And that's how I understand these to be. So that's why I actually call them a soul wisdom compass, because
Mm.
you can come back to it, and no matter what direction you're moving in, it aligns with you where you are right then and with your intentions, where you're going, your highest self. And it brings in a whole nother layer of meaning. Even though the words haven't changed, the meaning has, because you are
Yeah.
in a different place.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the beautiful thing about art in general, because
Mhm.
we can bring it into the world having a certain experience or a certain lens, but then the person receiving it is going to receive it in their lens. And
Yes.
that's an interesting thing about creating and putting that stuff into the world, because you're giving it over to someone else to make it their own at that point, to internalize that and to make it their own and to make it what it means to them.
Yeah.
So there's a big piece of sharing there, and then when you can hear it back, if you ever get to, hear it back from people who are
It's
interpreting your work, it's like
Yeah,
a reciprocal, it's this amazing, beautiful thing to see how it can take on different, shades, I
yeah,
guess. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it. It does. It's the gift that keeps on giving. I think
Yeah.
that's exactly what it is. So,
Mhm.
oh my
Mhm.
goodness, Becky, this has been so beautiful and soulful, and just I've really enjoyed this conversation so much.
Me
Um,
too.
please tell our listeners how they can work with you if they'd like to work with you, and any projects that you're excited about right now.
Sure. So, exciting projects right now is that I have a music studio, 426 Studios. It's FOUR and the number 26. I think we're
Nice.
at the426.com on the web. But right now we are getting ready to go back out and launch our original music. So we have for many years just done covers, even though we write our own songs. We just never kind of doubled down on doing those. I don't know why, but we have
It's okay.
we have 4 original music showcases coming up in New York City in the next, month and a half. So I'm really
Nice.
excited about those. I'm really dialed in and working hard on those right now with our band, our full bands, which is really exciting and fun. We'll turn that into an
That's so
album soon.
exciting.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
really big.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a whole new thing for me because I have music, my own original music that's out on Spotify. I did those on my own, without my band. And so this is the first time I'm doing something with my band, and we're intentionally going out and playing. So that's exciting, and
Nice.
you know, a
Yay.
new thing for me. So I'm excited about that. And in my coaching company is called Intune, and I am on the web at theintuneexperience.com. If you go there, you can find everything about my coaching. You can find my podcast, Unleash Your Soul Song, and you can even find my music and a link to my music company there. So it's all on the Intune website.
Beautiful. I'll make sure to drop those links as well, and have all of that in all of the places where you'll find this podcast in the
Thank
future,
you.
podcast right now. So, absolutely. Thank you so much, Becki. You're doing amazing things, and I'm so excited to see what you keep creating. Thank you for being here today, and thank you to everyone who came in live and everyone
Yeah.
who's watching in the future. So, thank you for joining us on the Soul Wisdom Exchange. Have a great day.
Thank you, Regina.
Absolutely.